All right, looks like we're live. Excuse me. So welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about PPC. So greetings, Randolph. Hi, Matthew. Hi, Roman or Roman, whatever you go by. Yeah, we'll just wait a minute or two for a few more people to get on. You want to say where you guys are from? And hi, Lila. How are you? Is it starting to cool down in Australia now? Because I'm in the desert in the US and now we're getting pretty hot. So it's full on air conditioning weather here now. Cool. Great to have you, Ramon. Chilly. I see. So yeah, I guess it's getting right around the end of November kind of equivalent to here, right? So yeah. Hey Jim, how are you? Electric blanket call, dang. All right. Okay, well, we got people on, so let's get rolling. I'm going to be talking about PPC, but specifically about strategy and understanding how strategy works, because PPC is a bid-based system. So first of all, you have to understand how bids work, and probably most of you do. But at the same time, Amazon's bidding system doesn't work as linearly as a normal bid system would. And on top of that, there's a whole bunch of other factors that play into things. So we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to share my screen. Hey, Jonah, good to see you, man. I'm going to share my screen. And if you guys can just give me a thumbs up or a hey, hey, or whatever it is when you can see my screen. Share, minimize. You should be seeing a big blue screen saying Amazon PPC, all about bids. Hey, Tanner, man. Good to see you too, dude. Yeah, I hope you enjoy what you learn here. All right, yeah, just somebody give me the A-OK that we're good to go. I know there's a delay on the chat, so I apologize for. All right, perfect. Thanks, Tanner. Thank you, Matthew. All right, cool. Yeah, so guys, we're talking about bids. Let's get right into it. So Amazon advertising is what they call it now, but it's pay-per-click, is bid-driven. So bids essentially function as a monetary way to create hierarchy. So just to make sure it's all clear in your head, basically it's a fight for the top spot, and whoever is willing to pay the most gets up there. It's a pay-to-play system. And so that's essentially why it's that way, because there's the need to create a hierarchy. But you have to understand the bidding system is not typical, and it's not like eBay. So for those of you familiar with eBay, or even if you're not familiar with eBay, you know, if somebody puts something up for sale and it's you know, not buy it now, but on an auction, then there's going to be a starting bid set by the seller, and then there's going to be people looking at it having the freedom to bid above that. And the only stipulation involved there is that eBay is going to set a minimum bid increment based on the price of the product. So if the starting price is 99 cents, I'm pretty sure eBay lets you bid in increments of, I can't remember, it's been a while since I bid on something so low, and I never bid in some crazy small increment, but I think it's in increments of 10 or 25 cents when it's really low. But then when you get up to like $500, the minimum bid increment is going to be like $25. But the trick with eBay and a normal bidding system is that, well, a normal electronic eBay style bidding system is that when you bid the highest, you only pay what the person below you bid. So you're not going to always pay what you actually bid, like at a physical auction for, like a luxury, what's the word? Not a souvenir. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. You go to an auction for some sort of fancy painting or something that's worth $1 million, and if you bid the highest, you're going to pay what you bid there. So Amazon is not like either of those systems, because algorithms play a part in how you're going to be treated. So unfortunately, it's a pay to play, but when you're new to the game, you're not going to be treated as an equal in the playing field, because Amazon has kind of a built-in trust system because they want to protect their customers because they're very customer driven. So there's always going to be impacts from different factors other than just what you bid. And everybody who launches a product finds this out when they say, I'm bidding $10, I'm bidding $20, and I can't get to the first spot. What's going on? And this is normal. It's because Amazon is just saying, look, we need to see what you're made of and see if this is a real thing before we're just going to put you in front of a bazillion people and have a bunch of people buy your stuff. So also, beyond just that little hazing period that Amazon gives you, there's relevance. So for instance, if your product is, say, red coffee mug, you can create a campaign and bid for white golf shorts all you want, but I guarantee you your ad is not going to show up on the first page of search results for white golf shorts no matter how much you bid, because Amazon is going to know with their machines that you are not that product and that you're not relevant and that you shouldn't be there, and they're going to do everything they can to prevent you from getting there. I'm not saying that their system is foolproof, and I'm sure you could trick it in some products. Even Amazon itself sometimes is advertising its own products in areas, which is probably their own power, but they're advertising things that are related but not exact in different areas. But anyhow, that's kind of just the basics. When you're setting up a campaign, you'll notice that Amazon gives suggested ranges for bids. So say we're talking about the red coffee mug and you want to do a short tail for just red coffee mug. Once you add that to your campaign, whether it's exact, broad, phrase, whatever it is, once you click add, or once you add it to your little list of what you're adding to it, it's going to then prompt you to choose the bid inside the campaign. Sorry I didn't get a screenshot of this for you guys, but if you've already started an Amazon PPC campaign, you'll know what I'm talking about. And when you get there, it's not that difficult to see. And you have to choose the bid, and there's going to be a suggested range from highest to lowest, or lowest to highest, sorry. And then you click add, and then it's going to be there in your campaign at the bid you choose. But you have to understand that when you're first launching, this range isn't going to be reliable. And generally, it, from my experience at least, hasn't been reliable when it comes to what the highest bid is. So kind of the way I look at it, and it can vary for different markets, I'm sure, but the way I look at it generally is that with very popular keywords, the top end of the suggested range for your bid that Amazon is going to give you isn't necessarily what's going to get you to the top slot or the top second slot. There's times when I've had to bid $1, $2, $3 above the top suggested bid to get to #1 slot for a keyword ad. But you have to understand that it also becomes more reliable once you've established sales history, because like I was talking in the last slide, there's that kind of testing period that Amazon puts you through when you're first new launching, and they're not going to boost you right to the top just at the normal rate. They're gonna test you out for a bit. This is why I recommend that people do an automatic campaign for a period of time before they go really hard on exact match campaigns. There's nothing wrong with going for exact match campaigns right off the bat, but then you're going to deal with that frustration more than likely where you don't show up, and that's just normal and you have to wait it out. But automatic campaigns, I think there's a little bit more lenience with, because Amazon's in control of it. But yeah, once you do have sales history, you're going to find that the dealings with PPC bids are going to be a bit more favorable to you. So how should you bid? Bidding strategy, it depends completely on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because with bids, it depends on what you want to do, right? Do you want to make money? Do you want to test your effectiveness on a keyword and you don't care about making money? Do you want to rank for a keyword that you have that you're showing up on page 3 for, and you know you're not going to make money doing it, but you do know that you've converted well from an automatic campaign that runs out of budget, and you want to test it out to see if you perform really well throughout the entire day with a higher bid? These are all the sorts of things you have to consider when you're determining how should I bid. So like I was saying, are you launching and trying to gain strong ranking? Are you already established, looking to maximize profit? Does your product have lots of reviews or a little or none? Is your average rating 4.5 stars or higher, or are you 4 or below? Because all of these things will impact, hi Christine, all of these things are going to impact the performance of your PPC campaigns based on how you're bidding, right? So for instance, if your product has 4.5 stars or higher, and your listing is competitive and your product is quality compared to the competition, you should have good performance with a high bid taking you to near top of the page. If you have a 4-star or lower rating, then there's a good chance that you're going to have slightly lower or possibly significantly lower, depending on your competition, conversion on your PPC ads, and it'll be more costly. So you have to take into consideration, what are your goals and what is your circumstance with regards to the state of your product. All right, bids need testing. So when you're dealing with bidding, you have to test. There's a saying that I use all the time when I'm talking to buddies that are also in the Amazon space: test, test, test. You don't know what's going to happen until you've tested it, and tested it thoroughly. So with testing, it requires time, and usually when money's on the line, we don't feel like we have a lot of time, especially when we're losing money or not making it like we want to. But this is something that you have to come to terms with, get at peace with when you're getting ready to get into the Amazon advertising game, because it's part of the deal. When you're testing, it takes time, so it requires patience and discipline with deliberate goals, because you can't be wishy-washy when you're doing a test. You can't start a test and then 2 days later you'll be like, it's not working the way I want, I'm going to change this one thing. And then 2 days later, it's not working the way I want, you'll change a different thing. And then so on and so forth. You can't repeat that because you're not doing a test. You don't know what's working and what's not, because you're not giving it enough time to create enough data to give you something concrete to make decisions on. So tests are illegitimate if they don't have enough data, because now, and here's where I'm going to say this is a little bit flexible, because I'm not going to say statistically significant from like a completely 100% scientific background. Like you don't need to have, $7,000 and 6 years worth of PPC test on a keyword with a certain bid in order to determine whether there's statistically significant data. You will get information faster than that. But with regards to statistic significance, what I'm referring to, for instance, I'll give an example, is let's say your product has a $12 profit margin. So if you were to sell organically and someone clicks on your listing, buys it, no PPC involved, you make $12. So that means you have $12 to play with, technically per sale in PPC, before you break even or start losing money, right? And now let's just say that you have an average cost per click on your ads. So when someone clicks on your ad, it's going to have an average cost of $1.50, right? So that means with $12, $1.50 is going to go into that profit. It's going to eat into that profit margin 9 times, I believe. Hang on, let me see if I've got my math right. No, 8 times. So after 8 clicks, your profit will be consumed if you don't have a sale yet. And if you do have a sale at the 12th click, you'll break even. I hope you guys are all solid on math and you can envision that in your head. But if we assume that your cost per click is $1.50, sorry, I should have wrote this in a slide so it was in front of you, but off the top of my head, if you have a $12 profit margin, your cost per click is $1.50, that gives you 8 clicks to make a sale before you break even or start losing money if you get more clicks. So with that information, a test you could do would just be based on, okay, well, as long as I am getting a sale on this keyword with this PPC campaign, every 7 clicks or less, I'm making money, right? So that could be kind of your benchmark, your standard for if the PPC campaign is quote unquote working or not in your favor, right? And ideally, you don't want to have to go 7 or 8 clicks to make a sale, because that would only be like a 12 to 15% conversion rate. You want to be more in like the 20 to 25, 30 range, because that would be a very successful product, especially in the early days. But knowing your numbers and knowing what you can sustain is part of the whole game. And having those metrics in front of you allows you to make logical tests so that you aren't just throwing money out the window, not knowing what you're doing, but you're also being able to judge performance, gauge whether this is being successful or whether you need to turn that off and try something new. And another thing to keep in mind too is that just because a keyword isn't working early on in the game doesn't mean it won't work later, because, what if keyword A works, makes you money, keyword B doesn't, and it loses you more money than keyword A makes you? All you have to do is cut your bid or turn that keyword B off, keep making money on keyword A, and find somewhere else you can target your money or your efforts to start making more money, so that you can come back to that important keyword later where you were losing too much money, and you can afford to throw money at it without profit in order to slowly gain ranking on that, and it's basically subsidized by other places where you're making money. All right, let's move on. So, given that information, you want to plan on testing your bids properly, which basically means budget for testing your bids properly. So given those numbers that I just mentioned, let's say that during the first couple days of your PPC campaign, you're running it for $50 a day, and let's just say for simplicity, you're only running this one keyword with the average 150 cost per click. So given that, it would take about what's that? 8 times 4, take about 32 clicks, and you'd use up $48. So you'd about 33 clicks, you'd use up that $50 budget. So the testing you could do is, okay, I'm gonna set the budget to $50. I know that's gonna get me 33 clicks a day before it runs out. And I know that I'm having success with that keyword if I'm getting, 10 or more sales a day from that keyword campaign that's getting me 33 clicks. That would be great success, right? So when you have something as straightforward and simple as that, judge whether it's successful or not, then it helps you to have a strategy for how you're going to proceed based on the data you receive, right? So let's say, okay, you know what? You did the campaign for a day, you did it for a week, let's say, and on average, instead of getting 10 sales a day for your $50 budget, you were actually getting 5. So instead of getting a 33% conversion rate approximately, you were getting a 15% conversion rate. 15 is not horrific. It is a good starting place for a new product being launched with no reviews. It's very good for a product no reviews, but that's information you can use to determine how to proceed forward. All right, so during your launch, PPC is likely going to consume more money than you'd prefer. More money than you would prefer, not that you would prefer. Excuse the typo. And that's just normal because, like I said, when you have no reviews, it's harder to convert. When you have no history with Amazon, they're putting you through a test period. There's a lot of factors. So therefore, you need to budget appropriately to acquire enough data to make informed decisions. So that's why you need to budget for things, right? Because let's say the first week, you're going to have that $50 budget. Just consider that $350 spent, not try to make money, right? And I'm talking about if you're launching a new product, of course. It's a different story when your product's been around for 6 months. But you just have to consider this is money that I'm investing in my business, in my product, because data is so important in the beginning when you're figuring out how to strategize your PPC campaigns, and of course down the road, how to optimize them and make them even better. So something to keep in mind is that bids are not static. The marketplace is not static. It's always changing, it's always shifting. There's always different things happening in every single market niche. And so bids naturally are going to fluctuate, just like how prices on different products in the marketplace, like for instance, a 4K TV is a lot cheaper now than it was 3 years ago because, there's more competition, there's more advancement in the technology, it's cheaper to produce because there's more demand, it's not as cutting edge anymore. Things change in markets, and therefore bids change because bids are advertising, and advertising is related to demand, right? So the bid war is always going to be waxing and waning, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your costs are going to wax and wane, but it could be that different keywords wax and wane, right? So bids will shift as markets morph and evolve. Some keywords gain in popularity, others die off. I've had keywords like this past Christmas season where, oh my gosh, it was like $4 a click for this keyword that everybody was trying to get to the top of. And, 3 months later, there's no search volume to that keyword and the bids are like under $1. And this is just natural because depending on what time of year, depending on what stage of the life cycle of the product or the market niche, things change. People start searching for different things because they're thinking different things because there's different influence going on in the world telling them they want that product, right? So this is why you need to do routine monitoring to adjust the market to the market environment as necessary. It is necessary, but another typo there, sorry, to adjust to the market environment as necessary because things are always changing. So you need to be on top of your game. You can't just set it and forget it because your PPC campaigns are going to become irrelevant, or they're going to become very, or I should say at least less effectual than they used to be. So judging good and bad. Now I've just put a little image here of what you can see. I hope you perceive this as good. And on the right, we've got bad. You don't want to be having 68% ACoS because it is the rare product indeed that has a 70% or greater profit margin. And of course, you don't want to be having individual keywords with 176, 71%. Notorious BID. Good one, Paul. Yeah, you don't want to be having these types of ACoSs, average cost of sale, that is. But you do usually like to have these ones because, hey, 8% to get a sale, that spells profit to me no matter what you're selling, usually. So keep in mind, though, that judging performance is a relative thing because like I was talking about earlier, it depends on your goals. It depends on what you're aiming for, right? So performance has to be judged based upon your intended goals related to the stage of your product life cycle. So what your PPC performance goals are going to be 3 years in with an established product making money are going to be completely 100% different than somebody who's launching a new product. It's their first product. They've never sold on Amazon before, and they're just trying to get a handle on things and try and elbow their way into the market and get seen, right? So you have to understand that you need to set your goals, commit to testing your goals properly or testing your campaigns to achieve your goals properly, and then you can judge performance based on whether your goals are being met or whether there's problems that are getting in the way of those goals being met and you need to adjust for them. So here's an example of what you could do with strategic positioning. So I apologize. There's another situation where I could have done a screenshot, but just for a second, or maybe if you have a second computer screen, bring up an Amazon search page. Just picture in your head an Amazon search page of something you've looked at recently, and consider that, of course, the first two things that show up are going to be sponsored ads. There's going to be a bunch of organically ranked products, and then maybe the next line down, there's going to be a 4-section chunk of sponsored ads again. And you have to consider that sometimes, depending on the state of your product and where you're at, the top 2 slots aren't always going to be the best place. It doesn't mean they won't it doesn't mean they won't be the best place for getting impressions. Of course, those will always be the best place for getting impressions. But the best place for overall performance is a different story because performance is based not only on impressions, but clicks, which cause a click-through rate based on how many clicks you're getting per impression. Then a conversion rate, which is how many sales you're getting per click, right? So you have to take into consideration the whole process. What you want is profitable clicks. You don't just want clicks and you don't just want impressions. But of course, it depends on your goal and your strategy at the time, because if you're a new product launching, Yes. You want impressions and clicks out the wazoo because you need data. You need to know what works and what doesn't. If you don't have that data, then you're just kind of a sitting duck. You're hoping that something good comes around. You're like a clam down in the sea, sticking your tongue out, waiting for something to come by and bless you. But when it comes to starting a product and launching, you need to gather that data to the best of your ability that your budget allows so that you can move quickly into what works best for your product and what best customers you can attract through the best keywords that work best for you. So at times, it could be better to position your ad as close as possible to a similar competitor that your product and listing are superior to in comparison. So say, for instance, let's just drop in another example. Okay, so let's say that it's the red coffee mug, right? So let's just say that in the red coffee mug market, you search red coffee mug on Amazon, it brings up a whole bunch of red coffee mugs, but you do notice that of the top, 10 or 12 products that show up on the screen when you first glance at it, that there's a bunch of different shades of red, right? And of course, there's going to be people who prefer that deep, dark brick red, sorry. And there's going to be some people that want the bright, in your face, happy colored red, and there's going to be people in between, right? And I'm sure there's probably people selling these different varieties of red mugs, and probably red mugs with red designs on them rather than just a straight flat color. So in this case, let's say you're selling a bright red mug and your top competition for that short tail keyword is also ranked on that page near the top, but you're not ranked anywhere near the top. You're on page 3, 4, 5, 6, nowhere because you're new, right? So it might actually be better after you try out the first 2 slots and determine, holy crap, I can't make money. I'm just losing like $20 an hour doing that. It might actually be smarter to drop your bids to the point at which you start settling within close proximity to that product that you think you're better than, that's already established in their ranks, right? So basically, it's like, let's see, what does Paul say here? Oh yeah, strategic positioning is like you standing in line at the grocery checkout and you stand inside someone's personal space bubble, smiling the whole time. Yes, exactly. It's kind of like if you could imagine at the checkout of a grocery store, and there's the let's say, you know how they're always trying to sell you magazines and chewing gum and whatever other goodies that are impulse buys at the checkout. There's a very established brand called Wrigley's Gum. And you know that you have made a better gum than Wrigley's. I'm not suggesting you compete with Wrigley's, by the way. That's my disclaimer. But for the sake of example, your product, you've got a better product than Wrigley's. But how can you get people to buy it? Well, you're just going to have to pay the grocery store whatever the fee is to get your gum sitting right next to the Wrigley's at whatever, so that people are seeing it right next to it and having that opportunity to have a comparison, right? Is your picture better? Is your packaging better? Are you going to attract them to click you first or click you second after checking out the other one, going, well, I want to look at both of these and see which one's better? That's just an idea. That's one thing you can do with regards to PPC strategy in order to be more conservative and potentially more profitable. So let's get into some technical stuff to do with how campaigns work. Give me a second, I gotta sip my drink here. All right, fixed versus dynamic bidding. So, excuse me. Fixed bids are pretty much exactly what they sound like. They're fixed. So they will not adjust. They will stay the same no matter what is happening. The only thing that can impact fixed bids is whatever setting you have in place for the bid plus function. We'll talk about that in a little bit more in detail in a second here. The alternative is dynamic bids, which is something really new that actually was only introduced, I think, right at the end of 2018, I believe. It was either right at the end of 2018 or right at the beginning of January. I forget, or maybe it was November. I can't remember now, but it was very recent. And dynamic bids essentially allow, you can give Amazon influential power over your PPC bids by letting them use their data from sales history on your product to adjust your bids to improve performance. Now, this is not a guaranteed thing. And obviously, the more data and the more positive data, I would say, that you have, probably the better it's going to perform for you, because it's kind of like, and I don't know how it works. I can't tell you exactly how it works. I don't have that information. Exactly. Yeah. You'll get different answers from different people because it's different no matter who's playing with it, depending on their product, right? But here's the way I look at it, which makes sense to me, and I would probably argue from a logical standpoint would probably apply across the board, is that since it's using your data that they have acquired over time from sales history on how to adjust your bids, it stands to reason that you almost don't want to use this unless you have favorable history that has been in an effective campaign, right? Because if you have, let's say you have a campaign with inadequate data, then Amazon, and you turn on dynamic bids, then you're basically giving Amazon the reins without useful information, right? So why would you turn on dynamic bids on a product that doesn't have any sales history, when the reason that what dynamic bids would function off of is sales history, right? And conversion. So the way I kind of look at it is, it's like you wouldn't apply for a credit card that requires excellent credit when you have poor or mediocre credit. You would need to get your credit in tip-top shape in order to apply for that credit card and successfully get approved, right? And so in the same way, I would hesitate to use dynamic bids unless you have what I would consider good data to share with it, to allow Amazon to work with, right? Like, say you have a campaign that you just threw together as a total noob. It was kind of your test campaign. You didn't know what you're doing. And it basically had like 200% ACoS for like the first month of its life. And you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. What am I going to do? So you turn on dynamic bids. It's not going to do anything for you, because all that's doing is handing Amazon a bunch of information that says, you do not convert, you do not convert, you do not convert. And they're going to adjust your bids based on that. And it's not going to be very effective. But if you have a campaign that's extremely profitable, you can test giving Amazon the reins with either dynamic bidding up and down or dynamic down, which we'll talk about some more later, and see what happens. Give it a test, right? Like I was saying before, test, test, test. But still, I consider it beta, and it's, it depends on what works for you, but you have to test it and try it out to find out. So let's look at the campaign settings page. So this is what you'll see. So if you can see my mouse, I hope. I'm going to fiddle around on here, but can someone type in the chat if you guys can see my mouse so that I know you're following along? But anyway, if you can, the ad groups area, this is going to be the subcategory area of any specific campaign that you create. So a campaign, when you make it, is kind of an overarching thing in which you can create actual campaigns in. So it's almost like the family. Okay, cool. Thanks, Paul. And then ad groups, you can have as many of you as you want within a specific campaign, and they act as kind of mini campaigns where you choose the campaign type, whether it's exact match, broad match, phrase match, and then you can choose the keywords that go in them. When you go to an ad group, you'll see these bars at the top, and this is where you choose the campaign settings to adjust these things that we've just been talking about. So by default, as far as I'm aware, PPC campaigns start on dynamic down only as the default. And I don't know why that's the default. I guess Amazon just wants to beta test everyone by default, so that they can get better at this service and harvest more data, probably so they can launch products and compete with us, which I know there's a lot of legal stuff going on to try and prevent that. And India already outlawed Amazon from competing on their own platform. But anyway, that's another story. But I recommend that you start with fixed bids, because fixed bids enable you to have complete control, complete monitoring. You know what's going on. If you start a campaign and you've got dynamic bids down only, then yes, you're going to get an average cost per click showing up in your PPC campaign, and you can still use that to judge how you should bid. But what you don't get with dynamic bids down only as a default is complete control over your positioning, right? So like I was saying before, sometimes it's actually not the best to be the top 2 slots depending on your goals and your situation. It might be better to put yourself at the bottom of the page, put yourself at the middle of the page, find a competitor that you're very strongly competitive against and try and get your ad to show up as close as possible to where they are naturally ranked. The only way you can have complete control over that positioning is with fixed bids and tweaking them over, sit down at your computer, plan on taking 30 to 60 minutes and tweak the bids up and down by 10, 25 cents at a time, refresh your page and see where your ad moves around as you keep changing the bids, and take note of where those positions are based on the bid you're playing, and do that a few days at different times of the day and see what happens, because that's how you can kind of get a gauge on cost positioning in that hierarchy of bids that we talked about in the beginning. And fixed bids is the only way to genuinely reliably do that, because you're not going to have Amazon twiddling your bid up and down to change your positioning based on what their machines think your conversion likelihood is. All right. So if you guys have any questions about that, post them in the chat. Basically, up and down, like it says here, we'll raise your bids by a maximum of 100%. So I'll just do the math on this. Like, let's say we'll go back to that example of your cost per click or your bid being $1.50. All right. So if you change your campaign setting, bidding strategy to up and down, and your highest bid is $1.50, then what's going to happen is you're going to have a potential $3 highest bid, right? Now, also keep in mind that that is true if your adjust bids by placement, which used to be called bid plus, is set to 0 and 0. If you have any increment of increase percentage-wise in this area, that's also going to impact how much your dynamic up and down or dynamic down, well, how much your dynamic up and down bid is going to be affected. Because say I put 100%, whoops, hang on. Say I put 100% on top of page search results, right? Now you could do a fixed bid with bid plus, and then that would lock your bid position between $1.50 and $3, and it would be dynamic between those two things. But it wouldn't be dynamic based upon conversion. It would simply be dynamic in reaction to competitor bids, because it's not going to be fluctuating based on anything to do with what Amazon thinks your bid should be. It's 100% based on what bid gets you the highest on the page. So if it takes $2.90 to get to slot 1, then your cost per click is going to be $2.90 if you have a 150 bid with a 100% increase, because you can go up to $3. If it takes $3 to get to the third position and $3.25 to get to the second and $4 to get to the third, or the first, I mean, then a $1.50 bid with 100% increase is only going to get you to the third position, where $3 will get you. If that makes sense, good. If it doesn't, I can try and explain this better in the Q&A part. But and dynamic down, basically the same thing, but you're going to be maxed out by whatever your bid is plus whatever your bid plus. And Amazon's only going to adjust it down to try and save you money when you're less convertible based on their data. All right, I hope that is clear on that. And so which to choose, right? When to go with which. So like I was saying earlier, fixed bids are essential to use when you're starting with a new product, because it has no sales history, and there's no point in giving Amazon control over your bid when it doesn't have any data to work with to make those guesses. So dynamic's still a new function of Amazon, so it's in beta and you can't trust it, but you can try it. And dynamic, the whole point of dynamic bidding is because here's the thing, right, is that monitoring your PPC, you can do it all day long if you want, and you could be adjusting all day long if you want. It's a lot of time. It basically turns your passive business into a constantly active business if you want to be a hardcore micromanager. And if you don't have the data to help you understand what works or not, and you're not sitting there like taking notes 24/7, you can't really know exactly what works best. You can just guess with, okay, I get less sales at this time of day. I'll turn my PPC down at this time of day so I'm not getting wasted clicks. That's something that people practice because it's simple and manageable, right? But having constant adjustments throughout the day that ideally would work in your favor is the point of having a dynamic campaign, because it basically allows you to have that type of monitoring, tweaking going on passively without you having to be checking all your keywords, checking all your sponsored ad positions, making adjustment to individual campaigns and individual keywords within campaigns to try and just save 50 cents or a buck here or there during this point in time of the day. So that's the reasoning behind it. Dynamic, use it at your own risk. Definitely test it. You want to know what happens when you use it, but don't go all in with like $1,000 budget with $5 bids on dynamic up and down, because you'll spend a lot of money. So, and just to finish up here, guys, I hope that from seeing all this stuff, hearing all this stuff, that you understand that PPC is not just like basic math, like 2 + 2 = 4 and you're done. There's a lot of art to it, because it is a game, you know what I mean? Like it's a game of chess. I know Paul likes to consider it like a game of chess, and it truly is, because it is a living thing and markets are always moving, they're always evolving. And so you need to know that it's not set it and forget it. It is set it and monitor it and routinely adjust it and then set it again. Like I said, things are always shifting. New product introductions and improvements tilt the scales of customer demand. So if somebody brings in a dramatic improvement into a market that just completely what's the word, vocab fail, makes all the competitors obsolete, that's going to have a huge impact on PPC. The more competition there is, aka the more people bidding up those top 2 slots and those first page positions, the more strategic, the more shrewd, the more almost cunning and crafty you have to become in order to find the sweet spot that's going to work for you, depending on how your current performance is with your campaigns and with your product and your product profitability and all that sort of stuff. So you have to understand that there's a finesse to PPC. It's not just simple, put some numbers in a machine and it'll spit out what you need to do, although there's plenty of services that sell that. I don't subscribe to any. I know that they give success to a lot of people, and I think they can work depending on the nature of your product and the competition in the market. But I think it's very important for people to understand how PPC works by doing it manually before they farm that out to a service, just so that you know what's going on, because it's your business and you want to understand it. You don't want to have people having control over you because you don't understand something about your business. So that is that. We've got about a little over 15 minutes, so it's Q&A time. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will stop sharing my screen. All right, so yeah. What do we got? I got one question from Amit, and yeah, okay. And I got another question from Matthew. All right, very good. Bring them in, guys. Okay, is there a way to know what time an impression and clicks were received? Amit, there is not. Well, there, like a time signature during the day, there is not. You can, you could test out a campaign. Let's give you an example. You can test out popularity by the day, right? That's pretty much the only timing you can do. Other than monitoring, as long as if you're just paying attention to your sales throughout the day, the best way to test impressions and clicks specifically for one keyword would be just to be monitoring sales throughout the day and seeing when a wave of sales comes in and when a dead period is, and when a wave of sales comes in, when a dead period is. And it's safe to assume that there's going to be some type of correlation between when sales are coming in and when sales are not coming in, and how many impressions there are and how many impressions it decreased by, because everything sales is a numbers game. Even if your product is crappy, probably you're going to get that one random person every so often that's going to buy it, at least on Amazon. And so given that's the case, it's just a numbers game. So generally you can rely on the fact that if at, say, 8 a.m. in the morning, you always get like 5 or 6 sales within 1 hour, there's probably a lot more people searching for your product during that hour of the day than there is at 1 p.m. when you maybe only get 1 sale, right? So that's your best in that regard. All right, Matthew says, how many reviews should I ideally get to bring my ACoS down from 170%? That's a hard question to answer, Matthew, but how many reviews do you have right now? What is your average star rating? And how many keywords are you manually bidding for exact match that are producing the majority of this overall 170 ACoS? None so far. Okay. All right. Let me think on this for a second, because the more info you can type to me about your situation, the more ideas I can present, because without any information on exactly what you're dealing with, it's pretty hard to just throw stuff out there that could be applicable. Layla or Lila, I don't know if it's Layla or Lila. I'm going to assume it's Lila, but yes, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Christine, I'm glad it was helpful. All right, 3 keywords, says Matthew, bring me sales at the moment, exact match. Okay. So now you said you have an 170% ACoS. Is there, are all 3 of them kind of all losing dramatic amounts of money? Or is one more like 50, 60, 70, 80% ACoS, and the other 2 are like 200, 250% ACoS? And also, whichever one is getting you the lowest ACoS, is it getting the most impressions and the most clicks? Or is it getting less impressions and less clicks? These are all the things you have to consider. One more than the other. All right, well, you might have to post something in the Facebook group, and I'll try and find it when you have, because I know the chat limits the amount of text you can put in there, and it can be kind of inconvenient. Lowest ACoS has the fewest impressions. Now, is the lowest ACoS with the fewest impressions also the longest tail keyword, the one that's most niched down? Yeah, if you can get all these details that I'm bringing up and whatever else you can think of that still keeps your product anonymized, post that in the Facebook group, because the more specific data you can give, the more judgment that can be made on what you're actually dealing with. Just what comes on the top of my head is that, you know, when you're dealing, so here's a strategy that I'm going to suggest that I think will be relevant to what you're dealing with. And also, Matthew, if you can let me know how long you've been online for, because if you have no reviews and your ACoS is 170%, if you're still in week 1 or week 2, this is nothing to be worried about. But if you're in like month 2 or month 3 and that's your ACoS, then, and you have no reviews, then there's a problem going on. About a week. Oh yeah, okay. You're totally fine. This is totally normal. You're in good shape. But here's a strategy that I'll tell you to try employing as you get your bearings more, as you kind of get the handle on things. Is so with PPC, you're going to notice that it's going to be the long tails with less traffic that you're going to get better traction on, because the top sellers are not worried about those keywords because they're already dominating the high traffic short tails. So they're not really worried about spending PPC on lower traffic keywords. So what's going to happen is you're not going to get as many impressions on these lower traffic keywords, but you're also not going to get as much of a fight from the established products on those keywords because they're not worried about it. So you can kind of be more dominant in these keywords where there's cheaper bids and less traffic and less competition, and it's easier to rank up on them. So with that said, the strategy that you might want to employ is what I kind of call like the stair-step strategy. And that's where you assess your PPC. So let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, when you've been in the game for a month, you have a bit more data, you've got some reviews, and you're starting to see keywords that are consistently performing better than others. Also, I'd recommend that you have an automatic campaign running. If you don't, maybe like 10 or 20 bucks a day on that with a reasonable bid, so it lasts throughout the day. But anyway, once you have that data, you'll want to identify not only which keywords are giving you the better ACOS, but you want to match which keywords are performing well with where your organic ranking has landed over that 3-week, 1-month period. So say, for instance, there's a 5-word short tail. Your ACOS is like 45% after a month, so it's performing better than other keywords. And you search that keyword, and you find that that your product is actually ranked in like the top 15 on that keyword, right? So that to me would be an indication you're getting traction on that keyword. Not only like is it giving you sales that are the most effective in your PPC campaign, assuming 45% is your lowest ACOS in this little example we're drawing, but you're also ranking there. So that means go aggressive on that, try and get further ranked. And then once you get in like the top 5 on that keyword, drop the bid down so that you're kind of on the middle of the page, and let that keyword bring you organic sales as they come in. And don't spend money on that keyword. Take the organic sale money that's coming from that keyword and channel that into the next one up. So the next keyword is like 60%, and say you're now ranked like 25. So let's go more aggressive on that one, try and get better ranking, try and get to the point where we're getting organic sales on that one. More reviews are going to help you get better conversions over time. It's just it's a snowball effect, right? So you have to start where you can make money, then just start stair-stepping up to where once you're getting some income coming in, you know, or you're less unprofitable, you can channel more of the budget that you have for advertising to keywords that are slightly higher traffic. You know, you're doing not as well, but you have more opportunity for ranking on those ones than the ones that are losing you money hand over fist. So I hope that makes sense, Matthew. But yeah, feel free to make a post in the Facebook group with more details. All right. Paul says, there are milestones to reviews though, like when you hit 20 reviews, Mark, you'll see a bump. When you hit 50 or 100, for sure, exactly, yeah. Reviews, they play a role in certain ways, but in certain ways they don't. Like for instance, if you have 2 reviews and a 5-star overall rating, it's gonna serve you way better than if you have 100 reviews and a 4-star overall rating. So there's a lot of play in that. Amit says again, if we have a negative exact keyword consisting of 2 words, would it still block also each one of the words separately? Example, coffee mug, will it still read plastic mug? Yeah, if you do exact match, it's only gonna negate that exact phrase as you wrote it. It's not gonna block anything else. The only way you could block plastic mug would be by typing an exact plastic mug as a negative keyword. Why do I always run an automatic campaign? I always run an automatic campaign because I always want to keep track of, like I was talking about before, the fluctuations in the market. So there might be keywords that start showing up that start having some sort of traction to them, either as a low traffic long tail, or a shift in the amount of traffic going to shorter tail or more popular high traffic keywords. And you want to keep up on the trends and see how things are going. And you also want to be able to find out if there's new keywords popping up that people aren't noticing that you can dominate and get a handful of organic sales from over the course of a week and just make some more free money. Roman says, can you run a fixed and dynamic bidding at the same time and check which one is better? I would say yes, but no, because technically you could have identical campaigns in like separate campaigns. Ad groups won't. So here, like I was saying before, there's a campaign, and then below that there's ad groups within the campaign, and then within the ad groups there's keywords that you specifically target, whether they're broad, phrase, or exact match. Separate campaigns will compete with each other. So if you did a campaign, an ad group, exact match, such and such, you did the exact campaign, ad group, exact match, such and such, you set this one to fixed, you set this one to dynamic, they would compete with each other, but the problem is that they would skew each other's data, right? So say for instance, they're running, and this one's at $2 bid, this one's at $2 bid, so that means it can bid up to $4 or it can drop below $2. The problem is that as soon as Amazon would think you need to drop below $2, you're still going to be bidding $2 from this one. So basically, running dynamic and fixed at the same time would sort of function almost like just having one campaign with 100% bid plus running and having the same results. And it would just skew data, and you wouldn't be able to figure out what's what. So you wouldn't want to do that. You just want to run it one way, toggle it, run it the other way, do it 2 weeks each way, do it a month each way, and see how it works. I hope that helped. And also, when you run the auto and get the reports, what do you do then with the keyword that are doing good? All right. So Paul, if the keyword is doing good, don't do it, you'll crash the internet. If the keyword is performing well, I will look at that keyword, find out who else of my competitors are showing up on that keyword and who's ranking better than me on it. And then I'll determine, okay, is my automatic campaign putting me to the top of the search results, or is it putting me down the middle? Because if it's a keyword where the bids are cheap and I'm getting good results, and I have the potential to outrank competitors because they're maybe not bidding on that keyword, but they're ranked higher than me just from being there longer, or whatever the case is, I might negate that in my auto campaign and create a manual campaign targeting it as like a broad match, maybe even, so that I still get a little bit of that kind of automatic broad targeting, but I know that campaign is going to target that specific keyword in its form, and I can try and rank up higher on that and maybe harvest a couple extra sales a day or a week or something like that, depending on how the traffic is. Or I might just be like, hey, that's cool to know about, and I'll leave my PPC running in my auto campaign, and when people search that once a month or whatever it is, depending on how often, I'll show up and maybe I'll get a 2% ACOS sale. All right, so Jetta or Jita, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, or Yetta, maybe it's Yetta. If you did have a good message, feel free to retype it in there. I'm still here for 3 more minutes. So I'm ready for you guys. We got a little under 180 seconds left. And I talked so much, I didn't even finish my kombucha. All right. Okay. Well, if nothing is coming through, I am going to, all right, there we go, there we go. There's the last one. Why is the lightning deal so powerful? From auto to manual to broad phrase to exact. Yeah, so Amit, my personal experience is phrase sucks. I've never had good results with phrase. So I pretty much ignore phrase. I don't even bother with it. I just do broad or I do exact. And basically, if it's long tail, I tend to default to broad. If it's short tail, I do exact, because if you do broad with short tail, you're going to get all sorts of data coming through and all sorts of different products coming through, and it might wear your budget down really fast for things that you don't want to be bidding on aggressively. But with broad match for long tails, generally, the longer the keyword, the less variations of it there's going to be that people are typing, because a really long keyword is going to be picked up by Amazon's autocomplete, and people are just going to default to going with the autocomplete when they search more than manually typing out 7 words for their keyword. So yeah, phrase just kind of sucks in my experience, but I'm sure it works for some people. But yeah, if you erase the phrase out of that, then I would agree with that strategy somewhat. But I would more say that long tail broad, short tail exact. And you can test them, of course, always test the short tails with broad, test the long tails with exact. I also create a stratum essentially within a campaign. Like, so say for instance, I have a campaign and it's actually only for one single keyword. But what I'll do is I'll have ad groups within that within that campaign, a broad match for that keyword, and then an exact match for that keyword, and I'll set the bids differently. So for instance, maybe for the exact match, where that's the primary keyword that I want focused on, I'll set the bid higher, but then the broad match ad group, I'll set the bid lower so that it's not competing with the exact match for that one main keyword, but any variation that broad match campaign will pick up, I can test that at a lower bid by having that broad match ad group at a lower bid, targeting the same keyword technically, but in different variations. I hope that made sense. Yeah, good old kombucha. It's my favorite. Paul, lightning deals, they're powerful because people like deals. And people also think lightning is cool, I think. And they're time sensitive. Phrase sucks, I agree. But then why did I just create a new phrase match campaign? I'm a hopeless optimist. All right. And let's leave with that. Let's all be optimists. And yeah, I'm glad I was able to help you guys out. And yeah, now you know where to refer to if you need some tips on bids, or if you see someone in the Facebook group that's asking about bids, just say, hey, there was a workshop on that. Go and check it out. Everyone, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later. Have a good night. Bye.